Hey everyone, welcome, welcome. We'll kick things off in just a few minutes, give a chance for people to join. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat if you'd like to drop your name. If you're networking, feel free to drop your LinkedIn profile. And we'll give a few minutes here for people to join. Hope everyone's having a great Monday. Is that an oxymoron? Great Monday? Not sure.
Maybe.
Yeah.
It's a Monday.
It's a Monday. You know, I like to try and make every day the best day it can be. So, all right. I see Alicia in the. Hi, Alicia. Thanks for being here. Welcome, everyone. Feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. Let me know if. Let me just double check here. Okay. And we'll get started here in a few minutes. All right. Yeah, we got a lot of people rolling in. So. And just so everyone knows, this is being recorded, so we will be able to share that after the event. But you only get one chance to ask your questions live, so make sure to participate and engage today in the presentation. Awesome. Thanks for introducing yourself. Again, feel free to introduce yourself in the chat. If you're networking, you can drop your LinkedIn. We'll get started in just another minute or so. We still have a couple more people rolling in. All right, I think we can go ahead and start to kick things off. I know more people will probably be hopping in as we go through, but I want to make sure that we have plenty of time to cover all the great information that I know Morgan has set up for you today. So I am Cecilia Martinez, she, her pronouns. I am the co-chapter head of the Atlanta chapter of Out in Tech. As a reminder, the code of conduct does apply to all of our events, including in-person and virtual. So make sure that you are following that and treating each other with kindness and respect. We will be using both the chat today. If you have any comments, things that you'd like to add to the presentation as we go along, you will also be using the Q&A function in Zoom. So if you do have any questions, please use the Q&A function. If you drop them in the chat, we may see them, but it's less of a chance that it'll get lost if you put it in Q&A. So we'll keep an eye out for those as we go through the session today, and Morgan will be happy to answer questions for you. All right, and so I will go ahead and turn it over to our amazing presenter today. I'm really excited to introduce Morgan. She is a CEO and a consultant and is here to give us some expertise today on this pay negotiation workshop. So Morgan, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. And Cecilia will be in the chat moderating for us today. Just huge thanks to her and Out in Tech. This event would not have been possible without Cecilia. So thank you so much for being our fearless leader today. Okay, hey everybody, I'm Morgan, and here today we are talking about the pay negotiation workshop brought to you by Braggin and Out in Tech. So I'm going to give a little bit more of an intro into myself and my business. And so I am Morgan. I am the force behind Braggin. I started this business in late 2022 because I got picked. I was in a situation where it turned out that the business that I was working for thought that there was no longer a place for me at that business. And because of my A-type personality and really frustration with that moment in time, it was this straw that broke the camel's back moment for me. And after a lifetime working in tech, working in blue collar industries, and seeing harassment, pay inequality, and other factors that impact women and really all people, I decided it was time to do something about it, and that thing was Braggin. So rather than go find another job, I followed the drumbeat of my heart and said, we need to change how people talk about compensation and how workers think about compensation, especially women and frankly, especially queer people. So my former company messed up. They kind of pissed off the wrong woman, and because I have a background in corporate compensation. And now I'm happy to say that last year, Braggin clients averaged $25,000 more per offer. For one client, that meant that she was able to buy a house. For another client, that meant that she's going to be able to move without any stress or with much reduced stress based on a $30,000 raise that she was able to take by switching roles. And actually, she ended up staying with her current employer thanks to a successful counteroffer negotiation, which we'll talk about here in a second. So all that to say, we've got lots to learn today. You're going to learn compensation myths and facts, how the heck pay works, how to pinpoint your market value, and we've got a worksheet, which you'll get here in just a little bit, and then what you can expect from a negotiation timeline. So with that, we are going to go ahead and get started. Okay, I've got my very first poll, which is going to be coming up here from Cecilia, and we've got to say thanks to WikiHow for kind of inspiring this question. So I want to hear from you guys. Would you rather negotiate an offer a raise or get kicked in the face? I'm going to give you just a second to respond here. Negotiating an offer a raise is winning. I like to see that. Okay, we've got just about 75% participation here, so I'm going to keep us rolling. So I love to see that most of you folks said negotiate an offer or raise. That means you're in the right place because you are already feeling the confidence to maybe kick someone else in the face and not have it be you. For those of you who said that you would rather get kicked in the face, ooh, I feel you there. But by the end of our conversation today, we hope that you're feeling more like a pay negotiation jujitsu master rather than having to take one in the face yourself. So even though this is a little bit of a joke to get us started, compensation is no joke. Our corporate culture actually encourages us to keep pay in the dark, to not talk about pay, to not discuss it with our peers or our coworkers. Employers would mostly prefer for you to never think about it, never question it, and really never talk about it. And that black box keeps fear around pay. And that fear keeps you pliant. It keeps you from negotiating. It keeps you from asking for more money. It keeps you from being curious about what you're worth in the market. And those all have real impacts on your compensation because, as we know, compensation is additive. So before we go on to our compensation myths here in a second, I want to shout out, are there any questions that you have around pay negotiation, around compensation that you want to make sure gets answered today? If so, go ahead and drop those in the Q&A so that Cecilia can note them and we can make sure that they get addressed. So take a second, do that. But in the meantime, we're going to get rolling here. Okay. So now we're going to talk a little bit about our compensation myths. And with the very first myth, we've got another poll for you. So Cecilia, go ahead and bring up that next poll. I want to know from you guys, do you think you should be communicating your current pay in your interviews? Let me know. Take a second. And while I'm waiting, we've got lots of participation here. I see our anonymous attendees Q&A on where do I recommend people look for their market value. We're actually going to talk about that here in just a little bit. So we'll get to your question. All right. With that, we've got pretty good participation in our poll here. And I'm seeing that 87% of you said false. I'm really excited to see that because this is false. And a little bit of a cheat here. This post was in our compensation myths, so that should be a little bit of a giveaway. For those folks of you that said true, absolutely never, ever, ever communicate your current pay in any kind of interview when you're discussing your future salary. What we know about pay is that your future pay has absolutely nothing to do with your current pay. Say, what if you were switching industries or you had gone and gained a valuable skill? Maybe you learned Python. Those factors would dramatically change your pay or impact it. And because of that, we want to base your future pay based on real market data rather than on your old pay. When you base your future pay on your current pay, you're actually taking a chance at selling yourself short. So never communicate your current pay. And actually, in 8 states, it's illegal for them to ask. We'll talk more about that here in a second, but that brings me to my second myth, which is that everyone's pay is the same and set in stone. This is absolutely false. Every single one of us signs a employment contract which has specific blanks that are specific to you. Every pay situation is a unique snowflake so that businesses can try to really minimize everyone's pay as much as possible. And pay is never set in stone. There are specific windows when pay negotiation is most likely to happen, and that's during an offer negotiation or maybe during a raise window, but you can always bring up a conversation about pay with your manager, and I encourage you to if you're feeling underpaid. Okay, myth number 3. All salary data will give you an accurate picture of your market value. Jumping back to that question of, where do I recommend people look? The thing to keep in mind is not all salary data is made the same. There are actually different types of salary databases. The salary databases that you might be most familiar with, like Indeed or Glassdoor, are what I like to call individually contributed salary databases. That means folks like you and me are going into the database and submitting your pay as an individual. And there's no guarantee from Glassdoor's perspective that that pay is correct or that you're not going in and just spamming and trying to raise the rate of that pay. What you really want to rely on are what we call business aggregated salary databases, and those are databases like Randstad or ONET, which is actually a government-based salary database. And with those databases, businesses are submitting their real pay data to the salary database. And then the aggregator like Randstad or Mercer are compiling that data and then pushing it back out to their customers, which are the businesses. So those are the types of databases that you want to be using so that you know that you're basing your pay estimate off of the same data that the business itself is estimating off of. Okay, last myth here. If I negotiate, they'll pull the offer. Oof, this is a hard one. I have talked to so many recruiters who say that this is almost never, ever, ever the case. You never say never. I've certainly talked with clients who think that this is the situation that happened. But the fact of the matter is that for the vast majority of businesses, it costs them more money to go find another candidate and to go resource somebody with your same skill set than it does for them to just pay you the $2,000, $5,000, or $10,000 extra that you're asking for. So by asking for a little bit more money, they're more likely to pay you to just save them the time and effort of having to go out and go through a whole interview process with somebody else. Keep that in mind whenever it's time for you to negotiate. Okay, I'm going to keep us moving here, and now we're going to go on to compensation facts. So 8 states, like I said, have already enacted salary range transparency laws. When it comes to these laws, there are essentially 2 things that comes with this transparency. The first is that the company must list the salary range within the job description. So you might see specific states listed like Colorado, New York, Washington, and quoting specific salary ranges within those states. Now, the business might say something like, oh, well, this is only for those specific states, but it's going to give you at least a sense of what that salary data looks like. With the second half of the transparency law is that it becomes illegal in that state for them to ask you about your salary history. Remember our very first myth about should you communicate your pay? Well, it's actually illegal in 8 states for them to even ask. And in 15 other states, that legislation is pending and being researched by different houses. And actually, I know we're chatting with folks in Georgia here today for the most part. There is currently a bill in the Labor and Industry Committee around pay transparency. So you can go and research that and maybe ask your legislators to move that bill forward if you're in Georgia right now. Okay, keeping us moving. Our second compensation fact is that only 37% of people always negotiate their salaries, while 18% never do. That 18% of people are really missing out because negotiation is essentially a crucial part of the pay negotiation process or of the hiring process. And even more kind of like stomach sickening fact is 7% of women attempted to negotiate their first salary compared to 57% of men. This lack of negotiation is actually one of the compounding factors for the wage gap, where women are more likely to accept the first offer that comes to them rather than negotiate as a man would. Now, this is not to like put down my ladies at all, because what studies show is that women are as keen negotiators as men when it comes to negotiating for someone else. So if you're a lady or femme on this call, the next time you're in a negotiation, the absolute best thing you can do for yourself is think that you're negotiating for someone else. This is going to make you more likely and more keen to negotiate, and you're going to be able to do it based on the timeline that we're going to look at here in just a minute. So my last compensation fact for you guys today is that changing jobs averages a 10% salary increase compared to the 2% raise for those who stayed at the same company. Even in this crazy, challenging job market, this is still true. The fastest way for you to make a 10% raise is to switch jobs. Now, if you want advice on resumes or how to actually find that job, go ahead and send me a message or email me and we can talk more about that. But when it comes to compensation, getting a job is the fastest way to get a raise. And one thing I stress to my clients is that you do not get what you don't ask for. And I've seen this really bite people in the butt when it comes to equity or specific benefits. If you didn't bring up equity in a conversation with a business who provides equity, they're not going to give it to you. They're not going to tell you about it. So that's why it's so important for you to know what it is that you're negotiating for and ask lots of questions. Okay, keeping us moving here. Next up, we are going to talk about compensation 101. Now, there are a lot of different terms when it comes to compensation, and you might be familiar with a few of these, like salary and base salary, or even total compensation. To run through these really quickly, if you have a base salary that's not based off of commission, then this first outline is probably what your salary composition looks like. So that base salary is the total amount of money that you're receiving on a regular basis that's usually expressed in an hourly or annual rate. That is cash in your pocket that you're getting. But also part of your total compensation are benefits. These are non-wage based compensation, things like insurance, 401k, your gym membership, specific employee perks. These are still considered part of your compensation, even though it might not be money in your wallet. And finally, there's bonuses. Bonuses are a one-time or periodic payment that are given to employees based on maybe their alignment to specific business or personal goals. When it comes to bonuses, though, there's a huge red flag that I want to wave here, because usually when in a negotiation situation, the place where a business will be most likely to kind of like give and take is within the bonus space. But the thing about bonuses is that they are not guaranteed. the bonus structure is going to be paid out based on the business's assessment of how they did against their goals. So you could have spent a whole bunch of time negotiating for a higher bonus, but when push comes to shove, if the business decides that they didn't do a good enough job, and they're actually going to not pay out their bonuses, you don't get that compensation. So whenever you're negotiating, make sure that you're trying to maximize your base salary, not just bonuses. Okay, next up, we're going to talk really briefly about commission. If you work in a sales role, or sometimes even in different types of support roles with working with customers directly, you might have commission. And so what we see in this kind of pink box here is the commission additive to a total compensation package. With commission, there are a million and one different types of commission structures. I really encourage you to go out and do some research on commission if you are working within a commission structure. We're not going to get too far into it today, but suffice to say, commission is its own type of snowflake within the already snowy world of compensation. Okay, keeping us moving here. Next up, we are going to take a 5,000-foot view of compensation. Now, you might have been familiar with the previous slide where we talked about the composites of a total compensation package. But when it comes to your place in the comp world, there is a much larger picture at play. So every business has a compensation philosophy, whether they're intentional about it or not. If you ever want to throw a recruiter for a loop, ask them what their business's compensation philosophy is, and depending on how quickly and concisely they're able to respond to you, will tell you a lot about how that business thinks about compensation. When it comes to salary bands, what we see here are there are specific grades within each salary band. And this picture is actually just one specific salary bands, or one salary band. There can be tens or even hundreds of salary bands within a business. A salary band is usually dedicated to a specific team or department. And what we can see here along the x-axis is the grades of the salary bands. And then, along the x-axis is the range of the salary bands. And then going up the y-axis is the grades of the salary bands. Like I said, this is just for one salary. This is just one salary band of potentially many. So keep in mind that the thing that is usually on the other side of this document is a leveling document. So if you've ever been a recipient of a document that's usually a spreadsheet of escalating titles, responsibilities, and success metrics, those are the metrics that are telling the business, or that the business has decided, make up these salary grades. So to go to the next level of title, it is pushing you up to the next level of grade. Within grades, there are specific pay ranges. So we can see each level of this is a grade, and then here is a pay range. Each range is made up of a minimum point, a maximum point, and a midpoint of the range. Those data points are based off of that salary data that I was talking about earlier, that are usually aggregated from businesses, all submitting their salary data to a single provider, and then that provider aggregating that salary information and pushing it back out to their clients. So the midpoint of the range can change dramatically depending on the grade or role specifically. Within our salary bands here, we've got a couple of people within our specific grade. So what we can see here is, like, this is you, for example. You are towards the lower end of the grade. Maybe you just got a promotion recently and were in grade 3 and got bumped up to the bottom of grade 2. But say somebody came on after you. If they did come on like a couple of months after you, but are within the same team, they're likely going to be higher in the grade because of inflation and because they likely negotiated a higher salary than you if the trend holds of the value of that job increasing. So they already came on after you, they're already further down the range. But say you train them up and they actually just took a promotion themselves, and now they're even further down the salary range than you are. This is something that can be really frustrating. And when businesses want to like hide their salary information or not be transparent with salary information, it's not because they don't have it. Every single business has this kind of structure in place, or at least large ones who are specific and thoughtful about their compensation are going to have this structure in place. It's how they keep track of how they pay people. They just don't want you to see that. So keep that in mind whenever you're negotiating, and think to yourself, like, where am I in the pay range? And that is the explicit question that you're going to want to ask in an interview of what is the pay range for this role and whereabouts in the range do you think I will fall? I'm going to take a breather for a second. Okay. We talked about pay penetration. That is how far you are in the range here. Okay. Now we're going to talk about discovering your market value. I want to like pause though. Cecilia, do we have any questions coming in so far about compensation?
Yeah, so we do. We have some questions. Thank you for those who have submitted. Please keep them coming. So this question here is, how do I negotiate salary at a startup? Startups typically don't have large amounts of disposable income.
Okay. How to negotiate at a startup. That startup exists because they took money from somebody. And whether it is the founder who is bankrolling that startup, or if it is a investment that they have taken where they've gone through an investment process and they've taken money from somebody, there's really I think like negotiating a salary depending on the business scale, it shouldn't really matter because they have money to give you and you should be paid accordingly. Now, there might be a question of, you know, if they're allowing you specific benefits or they're going to give you a large amount of equity as a part of that compensation and you want to take that equity risk, that would be probably the biggest differentiator for startups that I would call out is what is the give and take that you're taking, hopefully, from them in order to justify if they're not paying you at the market rate. So hopefully that answered your question. Let's do two more, Cecilia.
Okay, this next one is, what if my current pay is at or near the top end of the reference spectrum?
Yeah. So if you're at the top end of the reference spectrum, which is that pay band, I'm not exactly sure what the question here is, but if you're at the top end of the range, then the question that you should be asking is what needs to happen for me to move into the next range level? So that's where the grading comes in. And if you have that grade document, reference back to that like spreadsheet we were thinking about earlier, with the multiple levels, you might take a look at that or ask for it specifically and talk to your manager about what are the requirements and success metrics for me to move up in that range, and is there room in that next range for me? Because that's another element of ranges, is that if there are too many people in a range, the business might move people around or be hesitant to move you up in the range. Okay, second or third question here.
Yeah, and just to add, I don't know if that question was specifically asking about like a range or if a recruiter said this is the budget we have for the role. But I will say from my personal experience that I've been told a specific budget for a position and then they were actually able to go over that. So there's always room to negotiate, whether it's an existing or new. And then so next question is, for junior software engineers, there's a lot of competition. I'm seeing applicants in the hundreds on job post. Is it more strategic to settle when there is this much competition?
What a great question. And I think it would depend on what your definition of settling is. and what the value in the market is for the role. If the compensation is remaining steady, just the fact that there's competition for the role doesn't necessarily mean that you should accept less money for the value of work that you're doing. If there's a lot of competition and they're offering you the role, then in some ways that makes you like the most qualified and they want you. And so I would encourage you to still negotiate. Just because there's a lot of people, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can't negotiate or that that's a bad idea. This is where we start getting into that space of, should I just accept what is given? Should I take this offer? And I'm always going to encourage people to negotiate, to ask for what they're worth. And if the offer that they're making you feels good, it feels like in line with the market research that you're doing, and you like the pay, great, take the offer. But you could ask for other types of benefits. Maybe you want to ask for a transportation stipend or a work from home stipend. Maybe you want to get your internet paid for. If you're hesitant about asking for more money, think about other non-monetary types of benefits that you could negotiate for instead. Okay, cool. So got through those 3 questions. I'm going to jump us back to our presentation here. So now we're going to talk about discovering your market value and your specific rates of pay. So knowing your market value and having those specific pay expectations prior to interviewing is the difference between being equitably and confidently compensated and like really feeling at peace in your compensation, and then feeling underpaid, undervalued, and painful in your job experience. If you're actually underpaid, you could actually be contributing to the wage gap by not negotiating or accepting that first offer. So when it comes to compensation, what we know is that it compounds over time. So the very first salary that you made as an employee actually sets the tone for all the compensation you're going to make throughout your life. And so the more you can do to maximize that compensation every step of the way means more compensation for you down the line. You want to keep that in mind as you're negotiating. To effectively negotiate your salary, you're going to want 2 things: to know your worth in the market and to have your personal pay expectations. And luckily, we've got a couple of worksheets that I'm going to pull up here for you guys here in just a second to work through those 2 things. So the exercise that we're going to run today is specifically on triangulating your value using salary databases. And then you're going to have all the resources you need to set your own personal pay expectations. Which this brings me to our 3rd question of our session today. Cecilia, go ahead and launch that poll. I want to hear from you guys. What do you think are the impacting factors of pay? This is a multi-select. There is a right answer. So see if you can determine what is the right compounding or impacting factors for pay. Okay, giving you just a second here. Okay, we're just about to 75. Okay, there we go. There's 75% participation. So I'm going to keep us rolling here. And you guys did a pretty good job here. So the 2 elements here that do not influence pay, or at least shouldn't influence pay, are the demographics of the candidate and the mission of the company. So we do see those are the least selected ones here. So good job if you didn't pick that. I just want to shout out for those of you who did pick demographics of the candidate. If you feel as though your demographics are playing a factor in your compensation, that's illegal. It's actually extremely illegal, and you can You should seek legal counsel if you feel that that's the case, or talk to your manager. There are conversations that absolutely should be had if your demographics are impacting your pay. Age and race and sexuality and gender are all protected classes and should absolutely not be impacting your pay when it comes to negotiations. That is bias in work, and you want to get rid of it. Also, the mission of the company, they can have the best mission in the world and still be underpaying people. I have worked for compensation companies, and I'm here to tell you that they don't compensate anyone any better than any other company. So it doesn't matter what the mission is. You want to make sure that you are being paid effectively. Let's talk about some of the other impacting factors, though. So education and certifications. Yes, though this is trending down for more of an emphasis on skills and experience. We actually see more and more job postings not listing an education requirement and instead listing a skills requirement or desiring people go through a skills assessment. What I hear from recruiters is that this is actually good news for bias fighting because it removes the qualification of having a specific education and instead says like, hey, can you do the job? And that allows for more space for women and minorities to show up and say like, yeah, I've got the chops. So that's a really cool thing about how kind of compensation is trending currently. Other impacting factors, geographic location can have a huge impact. Depending on the business's compensation philosophy, this is where you should ask your employer, is my compensation localized or is it nationalized? If it's localized, then that means you're getting paid based on the pay rate of your area. So if you're in rural Georgia, that means that your pay is probably going to be bottom rung compared to if you're living in New York or Seattle, places where pay is going to be much higher. But if they are nationalizing pay, then that means that your pay is going to kind of be equaled out rather than localized based on specific highs or really low lows. And shouting back to the person who asked about the stage of the company, that can impact and can create a different mix of pay if they're adding equity into the mix. Okay, cool. So with all of that said, we now know some of the impacting factors of pay. Now we're going to get started triangulating your value using real salary databases, and we're going to do that right now. Okay, so go ahead and you can follow along for me. Cecilia, two things. Let's drop the triangulate your market value URL into the chat. And then we can also get that poll number 3 live because I want to hear from you guys. What role do you want us to research live? We've got a different selection of roles here today. So go ahead and pick the role that you would like to see the most. Man, not a single network security engineer. All right. IT's not showing up today. All right, we're just about at 75%. Ooh, and product manager just edged it out. Okay, so we're gonna go with product manager today as the role that we're going to do some salary research on. Cool, so I'm gonna go ahead and close our poll out here. One last call, if you want the triangulate your market value worksheet or the setting salary expectations worksheet, you can use these 2 QR codes here. The triangulate your market value worksheet is what we're going to be working through together. For both of these documents, you're going to have viewer access initially. So go ahead and create a copy in your name and save it to your drive. Beautiful. I'm going to go ahead and get us into our live demo. So we said product manager as the role that we're evaluating today. So here I'm in the triangulate your market value worksheet. This is one that I have saved separately. So today we are in Atlanta, which is in Georgia, and our title is product manager. And we know that that salary structure is usually salaried. And just to quickly say, if you're in this doc, you can see a little bit more about the types of impacting factors. And then we have links to the 4 salary databases that we're going to be using today. And with that, we're going to be documenting through those salary databases right here. So feel free to follow along if you're a product manager, but if you're not, you can also follow along. But this is essentially the process that you will go through to figure out your pay in the market. So starting with Robert Half, the link in the document also links to here. So I'm going to scroll down and we're looking for a product manager role. And with some of these, you're going to want to wait for it to respond because they are basing the pay based on specific titles. So here we're going to select Product Manager Technology, and we want to set our location to Georgia or to Atlanta. Cool. And now we're going to search our salaries. And bear with my slow internet. Beautiful. Okay, so now we've got some salary data from Robert Half on the pay range for a product manager in Atlanta. And what we can see here is it's going to highlight some specific skills that they expect a product manager to have and give a little bit more information about the salary range. So think back to that slide where we were showing the minimum point, the midpoint, and the high point. That is the same kind of chart that we're looking at here. So with the 50th percentile, that means that is the midpoint of the range. So if you are looking to be higher in the range, you might want to be at that 75th percentile, or if you're looking lower in the range, if you're just starting out in your product management role, then you're going to be lower, maybe towards that 25th percentile. So we're going to go ahead and copy the salary range here. And I'm going to jump back to my triangulate salary and drop it in our total compensation. And for all of these, we're talking product managers. And we know it's GA. Okay, and you're going to want to keep in mind, like, what is the difference between base salary and total compensation? Some of these will break it out that explicitly, but not all of them. So with this, I think this is telling us total compensation. So that's good for us to know. Okay, so next up, we're going to go take a look at ONET Online. This is actually a database that is based on Department of Labor salary databases. And this is going to be usually a more technical, like blue collar almost labor database, but there will still be some technical or still some tech related project types of roles. So we're going to look for product manager, and it is going to give us some things. I think so this is where compensation becomes both an art and a science, because everyone's going to have different types of names for things, and we want to pick the ones that are kind of closest. Let's pick. Let's see if we can go slightly different. Oh, that took us even further away. So we're going to go back to product manager. Okay, so ONET is not helping us out here a lot. So we're going to look at producers and directors and see what that wants to say.
Maybe business analyst. I've seen that used as a product manager like title as well. I don't know if that would show up.
So business intelligence analyst, we do get, so this is where we're going to get specific. Business intelligence analyst is going to be probably pretty different because this is going to be based a lot on coding when it gives us our technology and skills. But if we scroll all the way down here, we can see education responsibilities and then wages. So here we're showing for a business intelligence analyst about $100,000 annually. I'm not going to pull this because I don't feel like this is super close right now. But if I wanted to go churn through professional, scientific, technical service industries, then I might be able to find a little bit of a better match. But I'm going to keep us moving here and we're going to go to Randstad. So Randstad is a little bit different than all the other salary databases in that you have to search based on category. And so we're going to go digital and then product manager. And so what we can see here is they have broken out based on specific cities. So they're giving us Atlanta, Georgia of 100,000, 100,000, 30, wow, numbers are hard. 100,000 and 30,000. Right, this number. So we're going to pull this one and drop it in our Randstad database. Okay, last up, we're going to Glassdoor. So the other salary databases that we looked at already were more of the aggregate salary databases. Glassdoor is the one that most people are familiar with, and this is the individually compiled salary database. So we're going to search for our product manager. In Georgia. Cool. And so now we've got another image of that salary range with the lowest percentile, the mid percentile, and then the highest percentile. And Glassdoor is actually going to let us take another layer deeper in that we can pick specific years of experience or even specific industries. So what we can see here is they're giving us a total pay range of $100,000 to about $120,000. But then they are also breaking it out based on base pay and then additional pay. So when we add this number and this number together, then we should be getting about that total pay range number. So I'm going to copy our total base pay or copy our base pay and drop it in our salary. And then copy the total pay range and put it in our total compensation. Okay, so in this situation, we're looking at our salary ranges here, and what we can see is there's a pretty significant range. So you might want to get more specific around timeliness. How far are you in your product manager journey? Are you looking for a senior type of product manager job? And that's going to help you read like, okay, about how far into this range am I? So with the total compensation, we might want to say if we are, let's say, halfway through our career as a product manager, we want to go for the 50th percentile. We might say something along the 130 mark based on the Robert Half data. And that's actually going to match perfectly with the Randstad data of the midpoint of 130. And 130 is also going to put us at that early range for the total compensation of the Glassdoor data. So this was a quick live demo of doing some salary research, pulling those things together. I'd love to hear, I want to like take a pause. What did you guys like learn going through these salary databases? Was anything surprising? Maybe drop it in the chat for me real fast. I'd love to hear like, what did you think about going through this process?
While people are hopping in the chat, I will say I've never done this before. So this is
Okay, I see huge pay ranges. Yeah, Angela, that's why it's so important to know kind of like where you are at in those pay ranges, because with some of these, where they were looking at almost $100,000 in a pay range. So we want to be, that's where like knowing the specific skills that you're adding can really increase or decrease that range. Tyler says, I've done a bit of this in my current search, but definitely haven't heard of a few of these sources. Cool. So sounds like we've got some newbies here to compensation. Not sure about what years of experience they apply for ONET and Randstand. Yeah, that is going to really depend on your salary range. You can usually assume that if you're lower in the range, you're going to have fewer years of experience. And to add another layer of complexity, you might be looking at like senior or junior titles, and just adding that other element or adding the element of technology is also going to inform your pay. This is why pay is such a like crazy black box, and why you want to do step 2 of this process, which is setting your salary expectations. When it comes to knowing your expectations, you got to know your market value, and then you've got to say like, okay, well, what the heck am I going to actually ask for? And that's why I recommend setting a reaching rate of pay, a preferred rate of pay, and an unacceptable rate of pay. When it comes to that reaching rate of pay, it should be something that makes you tingly and excited and afraid. You should be nervous when you ask for this number, but that's the number that you want to ask for because you're expecting them to work you down to your preferred rate of pay. So I highly recommend filling this out and either printing it out or having the PDF up whenever you are going through an interview scenario to know exactly what the heck you're going to say for your salary base and total compensation, and then what your unacceptable range is when it comes to money that is your like do not pass go. Cool. So I'm going to keep us trucking here. It looks like there's not a ton of questions coming in. Oh, any Canadian sites that I'd recommend? Actually, no, that's a really great question, though. Let me hold on to that. There are lots of salary databases out there specific to industries even. I've seen salary databases for like nonprofit work or government work. The kind of the best thing that you might be able to do is like Google Canadian and salary databases. But that's a good point, and let me research that more. Okay. Jackie saying that she's not sure her question popped up in the Q&A. Jackie, we'll come back to your question here in just a second, because we're gonna make sure we close this bad boy out. Okay. So we followed along. We did our market value assessment. We know what we're worth in the market. We know how to set pay expectations. Now, really, the next thing is thinking, what does a timeline for pay negotiation look like? So this is your guide, handy guide to pay negotiation. In starting out with pay negotiation, you're going to want to ask for the expected pay range in your very first interview. And you're asking for the range, not just how much are you expecting to pay. That way you can go back to your triangulate your market value assessment and say, okay, is the pay range that they're communicating to me the pay range that I'm expecting to see? And where does my preferred rate of pay fall within that range? The next thing that you're going to do is share your salary expectations. So that's why it's so important to be informed about the compensation that you expect so that you can show up and say, this is the pay that I'm looking for. Where does it fall within your range? But then never, ever, ever communicating your current pay as it's irrelevant to the conversation. Now, between the first interview and the offer letter, there can be months, weeks and months of back and forth interviews, especially these days. But for our sake today, we're going to jump forward to when you actually receive that offer. The very first thing that you should do is celebrate. Be excited because you probably went through months of searching and probably a painful job search. So congrats on getting that offer. But the next thing that you can do is take a second, take a beat, breathe, and ask yourself like, okay, what is the kind of like range that I'm expecting? Do your due diligence next up. So when you respond to that initial offer, you want to express excitement and gratitude. I'm so excited to work at XYZ company. Thank you so much for extending this offer. I'd like to consider it for a few days. Please let me get back to you on Monday with my response. So once you have said like, thanks, hold on a second, you're going to do your due diligence. You're going to go back to that market value assessment and you're going to ask yourself, how do these things align? You're going to want to ask your business, your current employer, for a counter offer. If you want to, this is the time right now. Once you've got offer in hand, this is the moment to go to your current employer and say, what, like, are you willing to counter? There are tactful ways to do that. Which I see the question about tactful ways to negotiate away from the pay question. Whenever you get asked, what is your current pay? Say, actually, we're discussing the pay for this current role. Thank you for asking what my previous pay was, but I'd really prefer to discuss the pay for the current role. Just continue pushing back and saying, actually, we're talking about this role and I have XYZ skills, which means that the compensation that I am expecting is X. So that's, again, why it's so important to have that number to give to them and say, this is the compensation that I'm looking for, which has nothing to do with your current pay. Okay, once you have done your due diligence, you've maybe made that counter offer ask, you're going to respond with your salary ask. And for everybody's benefit today, the next slide actually has some email templates that you can take a picture of here in a second to templatize those responses if you want that. So you're going to respond and say, thanks, I'm excited, this is great, but I'm looking for X, can you meet it? So once you make that salary ask, the ball is really in their court. They're going to respond in one of three ways. They're going to maybe accept your offer outright, which, wow, congratulations. That's really exciting for you. That rarely happens. So put a feather in your cap and feel really proud. Maybe they'll come back to you with another offer that's a little bit lower, but with some amendments. You should still put a feather in your cap because that means that you just maximized your salary and you got the most out of them. So they wouldn't budge any further and you still went out, you negotiated, you showed up, and you can feel confident that the offer that they're giving you is kind of the most that they're willing to budge on. And then finally, they might play hardball with you. They might say, nope, this is the range, take it or leave it. Then the ball is in your court to say, okay, I want to take this pay, or I'm really excited about this company. If they choose to play hardball with you, that's where you can pivot to the benefits negotiation. So those non-monetary things. So asking, okay, if you won't provide me with more monetary compensation, are there other types of benefits that you can provide to me to sweeten the deal a little bit? Finally, you're closing the deal, you've assessed the offers and counter offers, you've made a data-informed decision based on your salary, and you can sign that employment contract with confidence, or you can walk away because they were trying to underpay you and you're not having that today. With that, here are those templates. So if you want to pull out your phone and take a quick snap of these templates for when you get the offer and when you are ready to ask for more. The key to most negotiation these days are a strongly worded email. So that is actually one of the joys of my business. And what I do is helping people write emails that that highlight their worth and show why you want the value that you're asking for. And that's why in this template specifically, you're going to see a space to highlight your specific skills and experiences that are relevant to the role that make you the most qualified candidate. Okay, last point here. So you have learned today, you have learned about salary databases, you've learned about compensation myths, you've learned about compensation facts, you have figured out what the heck you can do to figure out what you're worth in the market. And there are a few questions that I want to leave you with before going into your next offer negotiation. The first question you want to ask yourself is the offer equitable based on my current market value? You can only know that by doing your current research. So make sure that you're doing that and make sure that you're doing it before you go into really any interview scenario. Second, what benefits are they offering? And better yet, what benefits do you actually want? If you're a parent, a lot of businesses are offering on-site childcare. That might be a huge benefit to you, and you might be willing to take a lower salary at that company because of that childcare versus taking a higher salary at a different company where you're not going to have access to that childcare. So figure out what the most important benefits for you are and make sure you're working that into your salary negotiation. If you want a comprehensive list, send me an email because I have a 8-page document that is every benefit you could ever ask for. Third question, do I want a counteroffer from my current employer? What are your sentiments for them right now? Do you feel like they've put a lot of work into me? I've put a lot of work into them. I like my coworkers. I got this offer on the table, but I'm not sure what I want to do with it. Ask your current employer for a counteroffer. If your hair is on fire and you just want to get the heck out of Dodge, then maybe you don't want to open that door for them. So be thoughtful about what are you going to do if you actually do get an offer on the table. Finally, am I prepared to negotiate? Well, after this session today, you should be. So thank you all so much for joining me and learning a little bit about compensation and how you can make sure you're maximizing your salary. And with that, thank you all so much. We crushed it on time here today. You can find me at all of these places. If you'd like to connect with me on LinkedIn, you can do so using this QR code here. And once again, I want to give a huge shout out to Cecilia Martinez and Out in Tech for making this event happen. It wouldn't have happened without them. So thank you guys so much for your time today.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Morgan. Let's give some love in the chat for all this amazing information. We will be sending out an email to the attendees with the worksheets that we shared today, as well as your contact information and a link to the slides, I believe, as well. So definitely make sure that you keep an eye out for that. I know that there are still some questions in the Q&A, and so Morgan has agreed to stay a little late and help us answer some more of those. So if you are able to stay on to get your question answered, please do so. But yeah, thank you so much for everyone's great participation today. So I do know that there was a question about, do you see negotiating remote work and or accommodations like remote work, scent-free office, flexible hours, et cetera, impacting salaries that companies are willing to offer? If yes, how do you recommend getting around those so you're able to work the way that you need to and still get the bag?
Yeah, great question here. There's two kind of questions there. Do I see it impacting? Yeah, I do. I see that as large corporations require work from office, and then smaller organizations are able to offer a more flexible work from home environment, or when businesses start prioritizing that work from home environment, we're going to see that act as more of a benefit than as a just pure location when it was more of a requirement during COVID. So we're really seeing the work from home opportunity turn into a competitive factor for some businesses. And that's something for you to keep in mind. You can push and say hey, where is my pay being localized, or is it more nationalized? So you want to ask specific questions of what is their compensation philosophy, and that's going to help tell you how they're setting your pay band. If it is localized to where you are specifically, if you're in a rural area, then you might want to ask for nationalized pay or ask to be based out of the largest nearest metropolitan area rather than in your rural area, because that's going to decrease your salary. Cecilia, did I answer all the parts of that question?
I believe so. Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's a question. Unfortunately, yeah, I think remote work and the other parts of it were about accommodations specifically, which I think kind of to your point, accommodations probably shouldn't affect, but they may. And so I think that was kind of part of it as well. So I think you answered that. There are some questions about raises. I don't know if you wanted to answer those specifically, because I know we were talking about negotiating for new offers today. But
Yeah, throw something at me.
okay, so one of them is saying, regarding raises, I was so excited for an offer 4 months post layoff that I didn't negotiate. They offered more than I asked, but it is still less than I previously made. Should I share with my manager during reviews with the goal of getting closer to my last salary?
Okay, in this situation, because I'm reading it here, it sounds like they accepted this offer, but they didn't negotiate. So they are now in this situation where they're already making less and they're trying to get to the point of where they're making the same compensation.
Mhm.
This is a hard one. What I would do, I know we've got Anonymous here. What I would do, Anonymous, is go through your experiences and skills and make a strong argument for why you should be making the salary that you were making. Has your role changed? Have you taken on more work? Express why it's important to you to be paid equitably, but base that explanation on your skills and experiences and not necessarily on, well, this is how much I was making. Can you match that? You already missed that door a little bit. So now you need to base the conversation based on your skills and what you're adding to the team and why you deserve to be compensated to that level.
Awesome. Yeah. And so for this next question, I think it's kind of related to what you're talking about, how your previous pay shouldn't impact what you're asking for. And the question is, how do you negotiate your salary if you're transitioning careers from a nonprofit fundraising role to a tech sales role?
Ooh, Catherine, do your research. That's my big note for you. That you are switching industries pretty dramatically, and so you're going to want to know what exactly are people making in this new industry that you're moving to. So my question for you would be, are you talking to other people in sales roles at tech companies? What have they said their compensation structure is? If you're coming from a nonprofit world and looking to transition into a commission role, which is what you're describing, how familiar are you with commission structures? So really take a second to educate yourself there. What is a commission, like what is the commission structure that they're expecting to pay you on? And be really clear about the success metrics that they're going to measure you against.
Awesome. Yeah, I think we may have answered this during the presentation, but it's what is the best way to go about negotiation when interviewing for a role that has a set salary range?
With the set salary range, if I mean, you've got room to negotiate unless you're at the top of the range. If you are saying like, actually, I have all of these skills and experiences, I should be at the top of this range. Maybe what you really need to be negotiating is a higher level rather than a like higher salary. The higher salary is going to come along with that, but I would say you need to open up the conversation to say like, I'm finding myself really at the extreme high end of this range. I'm curious to see what the next level up is. What are the roles and responsibilities there? Can we negotiate a job title change as well as negotiating for compensation? Title changes are absolutely something that you can also negotiate for in an offer. So if you want your title to be something specific, make sure you ask for it.
Very good point. So there's a question. I'm going to skip that one because I believe that we answered it throughout the presentation. It was from earlier. And then that one's related to raises, but I'm going to focus on this next one here. What are some red flags to watch out for in job posts? For example, are there keywords that strongly correlates to intention to underpay?
Ooh, great question. Okay, so one thing that I actually want to call out here is y'all watch out for the job scams right now. This is something that I have actually had clients fall prey to, and it is, the days of like people calling your grandma and asking her for $5,000 so they can get out of Ecuador. Like, I don't know if that's still happening or not, but these days the hot scam are job scams. So if you get somebody who's emailing you, it has this offer, it's so exciting. This happens a lot, especially with entry level types of roles. Be careful. Do your research. Who is reaching out to you? Are they using a real company address? Figure out like, are they on LinkedIn? Can you follow up with them? Can you send them a message and verify that it's a real job? So make sure that you are verifying. And if they want to send you a check to have cashed, don't.
Yeah.
A business should not ask you for any of your bank information until you have already signed an offer letter and gone through the process of being hired. And so if somebody is eagerly saying, oh, here, you have this job, and also give us your bank information, that should be sending off red flags in your mind. As far as other red flags around intent to underpay, I would say make sure you're looking out for like, can they communicate their pay philosophy to you? Can they communicate the pay range to you? Are they asking you what your current salary is? Because again, that's illegal in 8 states now and frowned upon in most others. So those would probably be the biggest factors to look out for. And if there's specific language around working in isolation, working in a fast-paced environment, working in kind of like automated asynchronous ways, that's a good indicator that they're looking for somebody to like sink all of their time into this job. And so you want to be really explicit about negotiating for your pay there as well if they're going to expect you to be on call all the time.
Awesome. Yeah, good point. So this next one is related to that question, so I'm just going to skip to it. But what if they refuse to share the pay range? Is that just like a no-go red flag, or?
If they refuse to share the pay range with you, ask why. Like, why are you not why are you not willing to share this range? You it'd be a little bit shady, but you could be like, I'm in Colorado, you have to tell me. If you just want to get the range out of them and you're not really worried about the job, because ultimately you'll have to tell them where you're at. But if they won't share the range with you, I would say that they're not with the times, that by and large, the legislation is trending towards pay ranges being a requirement. What I see much more often is huge pay ranges where we're seeing $100,000 or more in the pay range. And then that's a sign that the business is trying to give themselves as much space as possible to negotiate for whatever lowest salary you'll take.
All right. Yeah, I'd say for me it's like a no-go if they're dodgy. Because if you think about it, if the interview process starts off that way, then what's the job going to be like? That's
Yeah.
kind of one of my philosophies. Um, so this question is there a place where we can role play salary negotiation segments until it becomes second nature? I'm confident I'm lacking that experience.
Yeah, TJ, you can call me. You've got my phone number there on the screen. You can send me an email. I do a 20-minute free consultation and we will role play your salary negotiation.
All right. So should I mention the pay in the new of the from the new offer to my current employer when I seek their counter offer?
Yes, you should communicate the new pay from the new offer to your current employer because they're going to want to know what the heck it is you're asking for. So you need to be explicit about like, hey, this is the offer on the table. This is how much they are offering me. Can you offer me X? And X can still be higher than what they're offering. And this is a really great tactic if you did receive an offer and you're unhappy with the compensation or you'd like increased compensation. This is one way to get that increased compensation is by leveraging that offer and seeing if your current employer will either match or exceed. The one thing I'll note about counter offers is to lead with gratefulness. This is something that I've seen work really, really well for my clients whenever they have gone through counter offer processes. Express thanks for what you've learned, express appreciation, but say, because I'm so talented and skilled, because of the learnings that I've had here, now I'm worth more in the market, and I'd like to have a conversation about how that aligns based on the offers that I'm receiving from other people.
All right. Awesome. So we have 3 questions left.
Did
And
we get
so
Jackie's question? I want to make sure too, because we said that we
yes, that was one that I asked about the accommodations and like working remotely.
Great.
And then so the ones that are in the Q&A, It's well known in my company that employees are underpaid and it's almost impossible to get a good raise. How can we get better pay?
Go back to that fact we talked about earlier, where you get a 10% raise usually when you move companies. If they just won't play ball with you, maybe it's time to go play ball somewhere else.
Yeah, exactly. And so this one is, what if the company you worked for has changed compensation since contracting has been signed, aka taking away vacation accrual?
Oh, this is a hard one. I have heard of this happening recently. Unfortunately, there is not a lot you can do if the machine has decided to turn against you and that the business has decided to reduce compensation in some way. Another way that we see this happen a lot is by reducing healthcare benefits. So if a business decides to switch up their healthcare providers and all of a sudden all of your providers are now out of network and the even your my gosh, what's it called? Deductible might increase, and you're receiving a lower quality healthcare plan. These are decisions that the business has made as cost-cutting efforts. And the questions that you need to ask yourself are, why are these changes being made? Do I need the benefits that are being stripped from me? And is it time for me to go somewhere else to seek those benefits?
Wow, I didn't realize that companies were doing that. That's pretty bad. So we do have one more question in the Q&A. I think I saw one more in the chat. So I think those are I'm gonna call them as the last two. So this next one is about accepting unpaid internships. So as a junior / entry-level software engineer right out of a boot camp, is it recommended to accept an unpaid internship to build my resume?
Ooh, anonymous, I feel ya. Coming out of a boot camp is a hard place to be. Because you don't have any experience. And the payment around internships, or the sentiments around payment of internships, is changing, which is exciting to see. When I was an intern, I was unpaid. It was like there was no question of payment. That sentiment has changed over time, where there is now an expectation of providing a living wage for most internships. I've seen actually businesses like Boeing offer $90,000 to interns, like crazy salaries for entry-level positions and for internships. So there are certainly businesses that are willing to pay their interns, but that is not always the case. So rather than accepting an unpaid internship, you might explore, are there places that you can volunteer? Is there contract work that you might be able to do for at least some pay? Do you know somebody with a business, like a small business, who has a business need that might shoot you $100 in exchange for your work, and then you can talk about that experience in your interview? So should you be accepting an unpaid internship these days? Only if you want to live with your parents. But I did that too. So sometimes that's where we're at. So I hope that answers the question a little bit, but I would certainly encourage you to seek out paid internships.
Yeah. It's a personal decision, I think,
Yeah.
ultimately. But I've also a boot camp grad, so I've been there as well. All right, so the one question that I saw in the chat, which will be the last question, is how important are titles going from one job to the next? I work for a startup pretty much wearing 10 hats without a solid name tag. Do recruiters put a lot of weight into your title?
Yes, they do. But here's the secret that I'm going to tell you, is that they're never going to be able to look up your title. That they're unless you're listed on a company website somewhere, nobody's going to know what your title now is. And I will tell you that recruiters specifically look for like ladder titles when reading resumes. But that means that, guess what? Your resume, it's in a Word document and it's editable. So whenever you are applying to a specific type of role, if there's a little finagling that you do from your previous work experience to say, well, I know that this other title is the kind of title that this department or this hiring manager is going to be looking for, edit the title. Be in alignment with what the heck they're looking for. but just make sure that you do it everywhere on LinkedIn or in any other place that your title exists, so that you're not creating confusion or maybe raising questions for people whenever they do research you.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you again, Morgan, for your time and your expertise and, volunteering to be here with us and answering all of these questions. So thank you, everyone, for your great participation. Again, we will be sending out a follow-up email with a link to the slides, a link to the worksheets, and also how you can reach Morgan. I encourage to also connect with her on LinkedIn as well. And we will also let us know, with Out in Tech, if you're not currently a member, or if you are not sure if you're currently a member, please go to outintech.com/join. I popped it there in the chat to sign up so that you can know about more events like this that we're having in the future, and also connect with the Global Out in Tech Network. So thank you again, Morgan, for being here, and I hope everyone had a great time.
Yeah. Thanks, everybody. It was wonderful being here.
Cheers, all.